Vice President Fennell. Treasurer Miller.
Here.
Director of Campus Program Glenn. Secretary Smith. Director of Felicity Jones.
Here.
I. Secretary Chang.
Here.
Student Rep to Alumni Mason.
Here.
Vice Rep Ward. Student Trustee Hoopler.
Here.
Student Rep to Residence Life Casper Woodhead. Staff Rep Venture. Senator Schwartz.
Here.
Senator Wilson. Senator Walsh.
Here.
Senator Pence. Here. Senator Benner. Here. Senator Nortman.
Here.
Senator McKenzie.
Here.
Senator Perillo.
Here.
Senator Johnson. Senator Lewis.
Here.
Senator Utz. Senator Walker. Senator Malaga.
Here.
Senator Henry.
Here.
Senator Bernstein.
Here.
Senator Spiro Santos. Senator Ortiga Valencia.
Here.
Senator Mouton. President Hernandez.
Here.
President March. President Cooper. President Lano.
Cool. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion. Seconded.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion. Seconded.
Thank you. I love this. All right, moving on. Student speak out. Are there any students who might wishing to speak out? Cool. No students wishing to speak out. Guest speakers. Michael Dunn. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Hey. All right. Thank you very much for having me today. This is my fourth time being with you all this year, and I really appreciate the chance to be here to share information and to be as transparent as possible around Title IX issues. Tonight, I want to share with you some brief updates on two things. First, the results of our recent campus climate survey, and second, some updates to the Title IX or sexual misconduct policies that I want to be bringing forward to the Board of Trustees at the upcoming meeting. I'm going to have a couple more meetings tomorrow, Wednesday the 17th. This is written down later, but at 12:15 and 5 in Cool Cinema to go into more detail on all of these things. And I welcome the chance to talk with y'all in other settings, even beyond these meetings, if that would be helpful, especially on the policy stuff. If it would be good to connect with the policy review committee folks or anybody else, I'm very happy to do that. And we'll try to keep it moving briskly. I know you got a lot going on. So in terms of the climate survey, try that. Beautiful. All right, climate survey. Okay, so the survey was open in January and February. We had a 31% response rate. That was up from 20% last year. So we're really pleased with the response rate. White students and female students were overrepresented among the student population who took the survey. And the Office of Institutional Research, or IR, conducted the analysis and drafted the conclusions. So they're the ones who kind of came up with all the information I'll be sharing with you today. In terms of the things I want to cover in this brief time, I want to talk about perceptions of the general campus culture and safety, how the college would handle a Title IX incident, folks' knowledge of Title IX resources, and the actual incidents of sexual misconduct. Students saying that they've experienced sexual violence or sexual assault since they've come to St. Mary's. Some of the headlines in the data, kind of from my take on it, perceptions of general campus culture took a hit last year. They fell, and they kind of remain at that lower level. On the other hand, the Title IX data has improved since last year, so that was really good. So we'll take a look at that. So perceptions of campus culture. You can see that we have 4 bar graphs for each question. They represent the data from 2016 through 2019. And all these questions were asked with certain statements, and then participants could respond anywhere from strongly disagree all the way through strongly agree, with neutral in the middle. So these bars represent the percentage of participants who said that they agreed or strongly agreed with these statements. The first question on the left, I feel valued in the classroom or learning environment. 88% agree with that, about where those numbers have been. Next, I feel happy to be at this college. 72% agreed with that. That was down 2 points from last year. I feel close to people on this campus. 70% agreed. And that was flat from last year. And the year before that, you can see there was a 10-point drop. I feel like I'm a part of this college. 66% agree with that. That was a 2-point drop from 2018, and there was a, some math, 11-point drop the year before. And lastly, here on this slide, I feel safe on this campus. 68% agree with that, and you can see kind of the trend over time. So folks could agree or disagree or be neutral on these questions. And what we saw here is that for the first 4 questions, everything except safety, the change is really an increase in neutral responses, not a strong rise in negative feelings. And we'll dig a little deeper into the safety question here in just a moment. But first, we asked IR to look into some of the demographic elements around these questions to find out how students are responding to these questions based on race or gender or class here about general campus culture. In terms of race, there were no statistically significant differences among perceptions of white students and students of color. In terms of gender, female students, reported feeling significantly less safe on campus than men. That was the really only difference there. In terms of class here, upper class students were generally more negative in terms of their perceptions on questions like feeling happy on campus, feeling close to folks on campus, and feeling safe. So that was pretty interesting as well. So then just taking a moment to look a little more closely at the safety question. These lines break out the agrees, the neutrals, and the disagrees. And as you can see, going from the top to the bottom, from 16 to 2019, there's a big increase in neutrals, and there's a pretty big increase in not feeling safe, right? Disagreeing that you feel safe. So we also had a question here where we asked folks to provide comments on why they feel safe or why they feel unsafe. And the IR office coded all of these comments to identify themes and trends that emerge. And so we have some comments on where these perceptions of safety are based from. Folks who said they do feel safe on campus, that's 68%. 55 said that it was because of public safety. That was the most common answer. Next, 51 people talked about the sense of community on campus. That was followed by resources, good lighting, and low crowd. Why do folks feel unsafe on campus? For the folks who responded that way, the number one most common response was the darkness on campus, the lack of lighting. The next response was insufficient consequences for perpetrators of sexual violence. 36 people said that. Next, folks talked about their own concerns or perceptions about discriminatory acts or different forms of harassment. 23 people said that. And then in addition, there were concerns about the lack of blue lights, cameras, the administration, public safety, concerns about nightlife, and other. So I wonder if there are opportunities here for folks to work together to address like the darkness piece in particular. I know that's been a source of concern for a really long time for a lot of people, in addition to all the other elements here. So that's kind of the general campus culture snapshot. In addition to safety, I'm going to turn to Title IX. This is the first of 2 slides with 7 questions where we ask folks, how do you feel the college would handle an incident of sexual misconduct? To me, this is kind of the part I look the most closely at in the survey to gauge general perceptions of what would happen. As you can see here, and as you'll see in the next 3 questions too, we took a hit last year in some questions more than others, and I was really happy and proud to see that we've really recovered that ground that we lost last year. So first, St. Mary's would take the report seriously. This year, 75% agreed with that. That was an increase of 11 points from the year before. The college would do its best to maintain the privacy of the person making the report. We're up to 84%. That's an all-time high since 2016. If requested by the person making the report, the college would forward the report to criminal investigators. That was 80%. That's a 5-point increase from last year. St. Mary's would take steps to protect the safety of the person making the report. That was up 8 points to 69%. Not that there was a room to grow in these numbers, for sure, but I was really happy to see them not continue a negative slide. The last 3 questions, St. Mary's would support the individual making the report. That question response rate went up 11 points to 67%, agreed with that. The college would take action to address factors that may have led to the misconduct, up 10 points to 56, over the 50% threshold, thankfully. And lastly, St. Mary's would handle the report fairly, 59%, up 10 points, back over 50%. Again, not that we could say, all right, check mark on this, job well done, we're good. But I was really pleased to see these numbers moving in a positive direction, especially when those other campus indicators we looked at continue to go kind of in a negative direction. We also had a place where folks could share comments about how they feel the college would handle an incident, right? And this reflects some of the work that's yet to be done. 24 people talked about concerns of sexual misconduct cases being mishandled or going nowhere or not being taken seriously. The next most common issue, 23 people expressed concern about there not being enough consequences for offenders, talking about alleged perpetrators being able to remain on campus or remain in proximity to victims in class or student life. So these are the main concerns that were raised. So going back and looking at those 7 questions, again, we analyzed the data to look at the averages among all those questions, right? Averaging the responses from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. And so you can see here are the average responses for 2016 through 2019. And that dark line in the middle is a composite, the average of all the scores. You can see that in 2018 the numbers went down, in 2019 the numbers are back up. Perceptions have improved in all scenarios, suggesting that the anomalous low point last year was an anomaly. Moving on, we asked folks about knowledge of campus resources. If a friend or I were assaulted, I know where to go to get help. That was at 83%. If a friend or I experienced sexual misconduct, I know where to go to make a report, 77%. I understand what happens when a student reports a claim of sexual misconduct. That was a high 68%, up 7 points from last year. 80% of folks said they knew where to find the policy, 65% say they've read it, 75% said the policy was very or somewhat clear. So pretty good numbers there, moving in the right direction. Next, the last kind of big piece I want to talk about is the incidence of sexual assault or sexual violence. We asked folks, have you experienced this since you've come to St. Mary's? This year, 20% of the people who took the survey said yes. 74% said no, 5% preferred not to say. So for the last couple of years, it was 25%, 26%, this year down 20% who say they've experienced it. That breaks down to 23% of the female survey participants and 10% of the male survey participants. And we didn't break that number down in terms of trans folks, just because the numbers weren't large enough to make that kind of a meaningful percentage from IR's perspective. So, and we'll come back and look at how this data compares with some other benchmarks too. So in terms of the folks who experienced sexual assault or sexual violence, 79% of them were female, 83% were white, and in terms of class standing, you can see a fairly even breakdown over the 4 years. So in terms of those points of comparison, as I mentioned, this year 20% of participants said they've experienced sexual violence since coming here. That's 23% of women and 10% of men. There have been some articles about other schools kind of releasing recent climate survey data as well. Last year, Johns Hopkins said that 28% of undergrads had experienced sexual assault. Duke made major headlines this year when they reported that 48% of undergrad women said they'd been sexually assaulted and 14% of undergrad men. Some of the other benchmark data, a big AAU survey from 2015 that looked at 27 different colleges and universities came up with 23% of women, 5% of men, and some other classic research that's still in use by the Maryland AG's office, 1 in 5 women, 1 in 16 men. So what this tells me is that our numbers, the research that we're seeing, the numbers that are being reported here kind of lines up with what we know of the prevalence of sexual violence on college campuses. So we asked these folks to share information about what happened, right? 85% said that it happened on campus. When we asked when did it happen, 62% said it happened during their first year, 15% each said sophomore and junior year, and then 5 or fewer participants said other times. We asked about when in the semester it happened to try to get a sense of like the red zone period when most sexual violence occurs on campuses, the first 6 or 8 weeks of the fall semester. That did not quite play out here. 18% said that it occurred in the first 6 weeks of the fall, 31% said it was later in the fall, 21% said in the spring. We also asked people to describe the perpetrator, kind of their affiliations, their roles on campus, that kind of thing, and they could mark as many were applicable. 69% said the other person was a student, 18% said it was an ex-romantic partner, 15% said it was an acquaintance or a stranger, and then 5 or fewer indicated that list of folks, right? And to see college staff up there, it's pretty concerning. Yeah, it's embracing information. We asked people, who did you tell about what happened? The most common resource folks turned to was a close friend. 26 people did that. The next most common was actually Title IX coordinator. That's me, 16 people. Followed by parent or guardian and romantic partner, 15 each. You can see the orange bars are college resources, the yellow ones are other or personal resources. It's notable that SMART is not listed up there. Neither is the sexual assault advocate, neither is health services. And the reason why is because only 5 people or fewer mentioned those, so they didn't get broken out into their own category. But those 3 offices are included in the other SMCM, that second line from the bottom, with 9 people total. And so as we look at this data, IR pointed out that the proportion of individuals choosing to talk with the Title IX coordinator and with faculty have increased a lot from 2016 to 2019. These changes suggest a high level of trust in both the Title IX coordinator and the faculty. So you can see how reports have changed kind of over this 4-year period. We also asked folks this year to rate the quality of help they've gotten from different college resources. And so you can see the bars at the bottom are good or very good, the middle line is neutral, the top line is poor or very poor. And again, I was proud to see that folks are saying they got good help, right? When I see like the Title IX piece, like I'm really proud. Okay, 12 people said they got good help, 1 was neutral, 3 said it was poor help. Not perfect by far, but I'm proud of like where we're going. We also asked folks to sort of look at this change in this data from last year to this year. IR thought that was notable too, and so you can see how even just from 1 year to the other, even though we're looking at small numbers, it was a marked improvement kind of in the data that came out. So that's about it for the climate survey piece. I just want to address kind of some of the general conclusions that were drawn from this. On the general campus culture side, perceptions are still generally positive, but they have not recovered from the negative shift from last year, especially about a sense of belonging, happiness, and safety at the college. But folks are really positive about feeling valued in the learning environment, leading safety concerns, address the darkness around campus, and a perceived lack of consequences for perpetrators of sexual misconduct. On the Title IX side, we have responses improving compared to previous surveys, especially last year, but many of the measures are still pretty low, with a perception of cases not being taken seriously or being mishandled. And finally, in terms of the incidents, we have 20% of survey participants saying they've experienced sexual assault or violence since coming here, a decrease of 6 points from last year. So, is it okay? I'll break for questions before we move on to the policy stuff. Any questions? That was a lot.
Isn't it just like when we get the slides for that? For the we get the presentation shared with us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I will share it with everyone afterwards.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so on the very first slide where it went from about the people feeling like they don't belong on campus, it was relatively high, and I think it was a year or 2 years ago. It dropped like 11, then it's 13
Yeah.
now. Did something happen that year that made it so it dropped that much?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. I think so. That was last year's data, and these numbers took a hit. So it's all in 2018. Those numbers plummeted. The Title IX numbers plummeted, and I don't know why. We had a smaller response rate then. It was 20%. So I don't know if the folks who participated in the survey had kind of a concentrated set of attitudes. But I'm not quite sure of that. And when we looked at the comments and things, there wasn't kind of one like striking catalyst for that kind of change.
I have a quick question. So I noticed that one of the questions was, do you know someone who's been sexually? I was wondering why that was asked. Because I feel like, just, one of them to say if it's sexually assaulted, the answer could be yes or no, but if you know someone who's equally important, that wasn't asked. So I was wondering why.
I'm not sure. I think, this survey came from a working group in Maryland that I was a part of, that we worked on a few years ago. We've been kind of tweaking it ever since. I think that, knowing what we know about how prevalent sexual violence is on college campuses, I'm sure everybody in this room knows somebody, right? And I think with the way social networks work and overlapping networks work, especially on a small campus like ours, I'm not sure, I think that information would illuminate sort of how many people are affected by this issue, how many people care about it, and have loved ones who are affected by this issue. But I don't know that it would help us get a sense of the actual numbers because there would be so much overlap.
Can you go back to the slide on the racial and sexual breakdown?
I'm sorry, which one?
It was reporting of the, like, sexual and racial.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Follow-up question, do you know off the top of your head the college breakdown in terms of demographics? Like what percent of the college identifies
I do not know that information
as
off the top of my
minority
head.
versus,
Yeah.
I'm concerned that 14% might be a bit high. So our college is very white, so I'm concerned that if there's a higher percentage of people who are minorities who are reported sexual assault, that might be something we need to address. I'm not sure that staff necessarily highlights that enough.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to this also because it's not just the overall breakdown demographically of the college, it's also who took the survey, right? And IR did note that in this case, white students were overrepresented and female students were overrepresented. But they did not feel that that overrepresentation among survey takers skewed this data with the way the numbers lined up. But to my knowledge, that's about as far as it goes, so I'm not equipped to answer that question. Any other questions? Justin?
Yeah, does the 14% refer to male or to the transgender?
Male. Yeah. So the colors are subtly gray. Any other questions? Zach?
Instead of this 2060, 2070, 2029, was there a possible like overlap? Was it confirmed that there would only be subjects to this?
No, and that's a good question, right? Because when we do this survey, we're not asking folks, only tell us about things that have happened since the last survey, right? And so someone could tell us about the same incident every year for multiple years, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But it is important to note that kind of like the way the reports that come in a given semester aren't necessarily about that semester. This survey's data, I think, reflects kind of a long tail of, 4 years and everyone who's been at the college in their whole career. So we don't really parse out that information beyond the breakdown of, when it happened and that. Any other questions? Okay, so moving on here, and I don't want to totally lose your focus. So a couple of minor updates before we shift into policy. So we had some good news. We got a grant from the Maryland Department of Health called Preventing Campus Sexual Assault Through Social Norms Change. This is a 5-year grant, and we'll be getting money every year. And we're going to be using this money to continue our work with A Call to Men, who came to campus last fall. They're going to be coming to campus in fall 2017, excuse me. A Call to Men is going to be coming to campus every semester for the next 5 years. And we have commitments from athletics and from residence life to do ongoing targeted work with different men's sports teams as well as Dorch and other communities, so that in addition to doing kind of like large scale events, we have like sustained ongoing development with male communities. We're working on focusing this effort on mobilizing men and boys to prevent sexual violence because that is one of the few things that research has shown that actually prevents sexual violence. And so I'm really excited about that. So we have the chance to build this partnership with the Call to Men. We're also going to be using these grant funds to hire a professional fellow to support this work, make sure it all happens. And we're going to be funding SMPs that are related to this topic. So if you are a rising junior, next year we're going to be starting to pull all that together so that we can really get things going. So I'm so excited about this, to do this kind of sustained work that can really change culture. We're also hiring a Title IX investigative prevention specialist. We have a great pool. We're doing on-campus interviews. We're going to have them in the summertime. And lastly, we're updating policies and training practices to make sure that we are up to speed with the latest in Maryland laws. I know we've talked a lot about the Trump administration and their federal Title IX guidance. We are not even there yet, right? That is still kind of in the hopper. The Education Department took all the comments that were made. They're still processing those. In the meantime, the Maryland General Assembly has been hard at work with a lot of stuff. Last year, they passed a law, SB 607, which requires all colleges and universities in Maryland to make some changes or to make sure that they're responding to sexual violence reports in a particular way. And we have to make sure that we have these changes in effect by this summer. And so a lot of these requirements we've been doing for many years, others are new. And so I want to kind of do a very quick overview of what those changes are as we prepare to talk to the board about them, and as we prepare to go more in depth tomorrow and any other time you'd like to do that, right? I'm happy to share like red line versions of the changes to show the specific language, but I want to talk in slightly broader strokes tonight. So a couple of big things. The Maryland Higher Education Commission, or MHEC, this is a big change. They are going to be paying the legal fees for lawyers for parties involved in sexual assault investigations on campus. That means a reporting party, someone who makes an allegation, and a responding party, someone who's accused of violating the policy, can both have free legal help paid for by MHEC. That's a big change, right? There are sometimes inequities in the process. If one party can afford a lawyer and the other can't. MHEC doesn't know how they're going to pay for this yet. They passed this law, but they didn't allocate any money. So that's kind of a legislative task right now. So as soon as MHEC kind of gets it together and figures out how to implement this policy, we will be on board to make sure that we are doing it as well. So that's a major change. There are also a number of specific measures that we have to make sure we incorporate and articulating a few specific rights. And I will quickly go through a couple of things there. So in addition to the attorneys from MHEC, folks are also entitled to have a non-attorney support person. So under this law, people can have up to 2 supporters for any kind of Title IX meeting or interview or process. So folks can bring their lawyer and their parent or a professor or a friend or an RA or whoever they want to have with them. So that's something we'll be codifying in the policy. In addition, the statute talks about a lot of rights of the parties that we want to make sure are in effect. And these rights are things we already do in terms of granting folks access to the case file, having ways to share testimony or statements, submitting evidence, witness lists, questions to ask the other party, all that stuff we're already doing. In addition, we have ways to make sure that someone can make a statement and they don't have to be in the presence of the other party. And the new thing that's here is that in addition to being able to review the whole report, parties will now have the chance to review the proposed findings about credibility before the outcome is reached. That is new. So it's not just, here's all the evidence we've gathered, let us know what you think one last time before we reach the outcome. Now it's, here's how the investigators have assessed your credibility and the credibility of the other party and the credibility of the witnesses. Read that, think about how you feel about it, and respond as you will. That is a change. That's kind of probably the most significant change in terms of the nuts and bolts of how the process works. The last big piece is about the treatment of certain kinds of information, prior sexual history and mental health history. Under this statute, the statute says that we have to clearly state that investigators cannot consider either student's prior sexual history with anybody else except the other party in the investigation, except for these specific carve-outs. To prove the source of an injury, to prove prior sexual misconduct, to support a claim that a student has an ulterior motive, or if someone puts their own sexual conduct at issue to impeach their credibility, right, or to show that they're not telling the truth. So these are things we have not articulated before, right? We've generally applied this under current policy, but the policy will now specify those exceptions. The last piece about mental health. Investigators may not consider a student's history of mental health counseling, treatment, or diagnosis unless the student consents. And our policy as of now does not say anything about mental health information. So this will be another change. So that's the big stuff. Again, we have like red line versions to show exactly how all this fits in, what that looks like. In terms of our next steps, we're here tonight. Then we have the meetings tomorrow. Please, if someone's making the official record of this meeting, please note that we have this meeting tomorrow. But again, that's not the only chance. I know folks are really busy. Wednesday is a busy day in general. If you would like to have a conversation about this any other time, let me know. I'm happy to meet or come to you and your group. Again, we'll be going through the policy language. And then the next step is to share this with the Board of Trustees, Student Affairs Committee, and then go to the board for approval so that we can implement everything on July 1st. That's that. Okay. Any questions about policies? As I step on my own applause.
Any questions? Comments or concerns? Awesome. All right, moving on. Missy, you're up.
I'll just talk very briefly. So I'm just here to announce a couple of things. This weekend is Bay to Bay Service Day on Saturday. You can register online and get a shirt. The shirts are yellow, regardless of whether or not you register. If you show up, you will get a shirt. It may not be the size that you normally wear, but you will get a shirt. So Bay to Bay Service Day is basically it's an alumni relations event. So it's called Bay to Bay because across the country, alumni are being sort of, one is an historic, one is a campus cleanup, and one is a butterfly garden. So if you're interested, it also counts for club service for club people. Another announcement is that next week is Arbor Week. There's a whole bunch of events. You can find a more detailed list of what those events are going to be inside SMCM. And the last thing, next week at SGA, I believe I will be presenting an environmental grant for an electric vehicle charging station that we're hoping to fund that will be open to the public. So that's all.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, moving on, we're going to do Rebecca as guest speaker tonight as president-elect to announce her exec board and everything else. Thank you.
And Robert was speaking for Roseanne. No. And then, yeah, hi, I'm Rebecca. Don't know you know me. Hello. I'm announcing the new exec for next year, which is really exciting. So everyone's excited. Yay! So starting with treasurer, which is Colin Sweat. You want to do this? Yay!
Let's hold our applause.
Oh yeah, good. And then Director of Campus Programming is Esther Chow. She will be here tonight, but she will be the Director of Campus Programming next year. Parliamentarian will be Elisa Hawkins, who is also not here tonight, but Sarah's here. Secretary is Cynthia Jones. Who are co-club coordinators are Victoria Chang and Janine Benner. Very exciting. And SGA Director of Publicity is going to be Anna Pez. Am I forgetting anyone? I think that's everything. That's everyone. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's our new exec, and I'm really excited. And everyone else is also excited. Cool. It's going to be really good here.
Unfortunately, Rose was sick, so she couldn't make it tonight. She actually felt really faint after class, so that's probably best that she took the rest. But she had a statement prepared that I'll now read to you guys. I would like to thank everyone again for electing Rebecca and I to serve as your student representatives. During our term, we hope to create and strengthen avenues for student voices. In order to aim toward this goal, transparency and communication from all members of our community is crucial. I would like to take the time now to not only introduce the very cool and hardworking people who applied for executive board, but also to officially acknowledge the potential of me studying abroad in Shanghai during the upcoming fall semester. We understand that although the vice president does not share as powerful of a role as the president, their presence during SGA meetings is crucial nonetheless to carry out the agenda, and is especially so in instances of debate. Rebecca, the current executive board, Derek Young, members of the incoming executive board, and I have all been discussing what we can do to make sure that the duties of vice president will be addressed if I'm studying abroad in the fall. In lieu of having a replacement vice president, we will delegate and coordinate the various tasks of the position of vice president within the executive board. At the moment, we have decided to split the duties of serving as a member of faculty senate and running SGA meetings between parliamentarian and secretary. We'll also be rotating the duties between secretary and parliamentarian on a weekly basis to ensure efficiency. If you all have any suggestions or concerns, we encourage you to voice them to us. Despite this potentially happening, we have no doubts or worries that this will impede progress in the SGA or the goals that we desire to fulfill as an executive. Thank you.
Any questions, comments, or concerns for Robert or for Rebecca?
Don't we film it live so we can share it watch also?
There's gonna be she can watch it later, but there's gonna be
There's gonna be a big context.
There's like kind of like a, I don't know if this would apply to here, or, I think it applies to, because it's on Facebook, there's like a fire poll, you can't have Facebook.
But we stream on YouTube, I don't know what YouTube.
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
She
maybe
would
so.
express interest in still staying involved, so just like, we'd still like, she'd still be up to date on everything, and she could still like be involved just from China.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on. New business. Bill 1917 regarding Tibetan Sam Mandala painting and performances.
Hey, so I've been working with some constituents that have expressed interest in this program, which is planned for next semester in the fall, between October 21st and October 25th. And so 7 years ago, we had some Tibetan monks visit our campus and stay for a couple days while they were on tour in the US. And we have wanted to do that again since, but haven't always they haven't always had the availability or the funds to get that working. So the Asian Studies Department chair has been working on this with Professor Schroeder as support, who was the connection. And with that, they're planning on bringing them again, but they're seeking some funds to kind of lock that down. And in that, I'm asking for $2,500 to help them put this program on. Currently, I do not have the full funds information from them, but since I have a week for moving this bill along, I'll be able to get that information within that week, and I'll have that to present again. Any questions? Could you repeat that?
Yeah, where are you getting $2,500 from? Where, which budget is it?
It's going to the operating budget.
Okay.
We've been having some trouble with Google Docs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a motion to amend the bill.
One second. Second. Okay. It's out of operating budget.
From where operating budget surplus. I actually asking.
Would you mind just reminding me, I know it's two budgets, is that one budget that's really jumbled up, and then the bunch of money?
No, this is the money from our operating budget, for the yearly operating budget, that's about, that is left over.
Got it. Cool.
Also, just clarification to everyone, we're not voting on this today. It is over our $1,500 amount and it has to be taken.
Yeah, so if I motion to move to roll call, just yell at me. Because I do that frequently.
You do, and then I'll do.
Any other questions or comments? Marie?
I wanted to disclose how much it is in our operating budget and the
That's
service.
surplus.
Yeah. How much?
Well, it's a projected amount, we'll have to approve it next week,
Yeah,
but
part of the issue is we don't know, like, so I can tell you how much it's like.
But yeah, we'll vote to approve our budget for next year, next week. We'll have hard numbers and also should be a soft estimate. While he's doing that, Colin, you're up.
Does this include lodging? I saw that like there's a breakdown at the bottom, and it included meals and things, but, where are they gonna stay?
So when, who I spoke to about this explained that, that like they have their own lodging already and that anything like extremely extra would just like kind of come out, like would be something they can remove anyways, if like they don't receive all their funding, but they have their own lodging. As for like the meal thing, if they don't have all the funds, they would like pull back a little bit and find alternative solutions.
Responded, so there's $34,180 in surplus. That's just operating budget for the surplus from this semester.
34,000, not 34,000. Right, 34,000. Nice. Anna.
So how many people is this gonna afford? Because that's.
It's presumed that there will be 11 Tibetan monks visiting.
Well, I kind of have like, it's like a two-parter, I guess. You said they're returning because they visited earlier, so I was wondering how high was the attendance at that previous event? If you are aware of those numbers, if not, that's fine. And then, is there like plans and like assurances that when this, I'm assuming this is gonna be like a big event, like it seems like it has a lot of events going on. How are you gonna, are there like plans in place and assurances that it will be advertised outside inside SMCM?
Yes.
Okay, because, and like what are those plans?
So of what I've heard, there's not information of the attendance of the event from 7 years ago, or I just don't know of it. As for the advertising and the outreach, yes, definitely. There's going to be outreach to the local community as well as potentially colleges nearby and their like social studies departments of people that may be interested in traveling from further away to come and visit us for this event. They're definitely going to be like targeting the newspaper and finding outreach within the local area.
I meant more like on campus, because I know there's been a lot of on-campus events that I personally think have suffered in terms of attendance because they rely solely on inside SMCM to advertise. So, what are like the plans for on campus?
I don't specifically know the plans for on campus, but I can definitely address that and share your concerns and get like a more finite answer of what they want to do with that.
Because I would think that probably I think you said that it was being like sponsored by the Asian Studies.
Yeah, they're heading.
Yeah, that office, and so I would think that they would probably be like, oh, if we talk to students, then maybe they'll spread by word of mouth and they'll post on inside SMCM. But like in my experience, just like in 1 year, I don't think that's a very reliable method of advertisement. And like there's not a lot of flyers around campus in general for like events and stuff. So
I imagine with this coming towards the beginning of the year, they can introduce it ahead of time. With people coming into campus, they might be able to introduce it with newcomers a lot.
All right, we have time for one more question, if anyone.
And any additional questions, email directly.
Or take our also be presented next week.
Yes, it's also going to be presented again next week as of anyway.
Cool. All right, moving on. Bylaws amendment 1904, creation of student-wide initiative committee.
Or,
Forward. Oh, it says committee. Oh,
it is a committee now, it's a standing committee.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the board.
Yay!
Motion to amend the title.
Motion to amend the title.
Please.
There's also change student life initiative committee to student life initiative. Thank you.
And we're at first.
You want me to keep this one, or?
Do you want me to?
First, we're at.
Yeah, I don't mind.
So you guys we kind of talked about it. Alec was kind of the founder of this project in which we've been working towards, where we've been working towards bettering student life on campus. And that one of our main projects this year was in terms of free menstrual products and working towards an emergency contraceptive vending machine because of issues with our office, with the Office of Student Activities and some of the money. Some of those things have not come to fruition completely, but we plan to continue to bring those completely into fruition next year. So me and Rebecca are planning on heading this committee as co-chairs for this board. And so one of the reasons why we decided to move it to be a board is to ensure that there is involvement and there's ability to vote on the different things that we are proposing and working towards. We want this to be productive and we want it to, okay. We want this board to be productive, and so one of the reasons why we chose to make it into a board was so that these members were to be not necessarily vetted by Rebecca and I, but they would have to undergo an application process to make sure that they are committed to this role, as opposed to something that's voluntary and that they feel that they can come and go as they please. In addition to this board, there is a public part of this committee. However, they are not voting members, but they are able to come and share what their experiences are and give suggestions and recommendations as to how we should proceed. So yeah. Any questions about this slip?
I have one question. Alec, what was I doing wrong?
So, this is, it was correct and where.
Oh,
it
okay,
was-
we done that to me.
It was, no, it was.
I got it.
And now it's the board, so like.
I'm sorry, Jake was saying, hey, in the first word I was changing.
So now see like the whereas it was. And then
I
now-
got it.
So I was messing up my sentences here.
Hey, it's Jake's fault.
I agree.
Moving on, thank you for answering my question.
You guys all read through it. There's a lot of laughing. I just felt like I was talking and people were laughing. So I was like, oh my
We were laughing at Zach's voice.
I was just like, how rude of him to be interrupting me currently.
Morgan literally said someone played notes. Any questions for this bill? This part? Yeah, order myself. Any
That's great.
any questions, comments, or concerns?
Also, we encourage all of you as senators to apply to be part of this board. Again, me and Rebecca will be heading it, and as you know, we are very passionate about change on this campus. We look forward to working with any and all of you. And tell your friends if you know people that are passionate about getting involved, and not necessarily in an SGA Senate capacity. This is another really great forum for them to express what they want from this campus and to better our campus as a whole.
So I'm just gonna say it. I think there's a lot of overlap between student life infrastructure and student life initiative. Speaking as a member of one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just had to make sure. Yeah, Colette goes, I was like, Colette, I think this is a good bill, and she goes, we're on it. I was like, no, we're not.
So I think yours more so ours is an initiatives type of committee where we're pushing more toward projects as opposed to a student life infrastructure. You're looking more at how to better through the administration, how to better through different groups on campus. So we are looking more specifically at projects such as that menstrual products bill. I spoke to a couple people who are interested in doing things with environmental projects, and so we would look more at large scheme projects as opposed to where student life infrastructure or whatever the other one is. They are looking more at maybe working with the rest of the college campus. Am I correct in saying that?
So if I may, alright, so yeah, I named the bill.
And it was horrible.
Very horrible imagination. The one, so they both tackle two substantively different problems. The SLIF C or whatever, the fund committee is to create institutional memory that doesn't exist. Where every single semester, or every single year, projects and ideas and things that we are concerned about, like long term, like more actually towards, I guess, enjoyment, get forgotten. So like, or even in some cases, more infrastructure. Pool tables being degraded for years. This one, the way I envisioned it, the way that it's been working with the mental products, it's really more like systemic issues, right? Things that that aren't necessarily strictly SGA, whereas I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, if that makes sense.
We should make a T-chart of which, like, slip and.
What if we should
Slip.
call it institutional
We
memory?
could also just change the acronym.
We can rename it.
Just changing that.
It just came.
Point of order, point of order. Thank you. So what I think then, since me and Alec have kind of described more so what the projects are, I think we're gonna sit down and create a T-chart because I'm a nerd. And thank you. And that way you guys can understand more so what the two different groups are, but in essential, I think that the idea is for these two groups to also work to coincide in what their projects are. But again, like Alex said, a lot of what SLIB is going to be working towards is those greater scheme projects that might not necessarily fall within SGA jurisdiction, such as menstrual products, like that's not necessarily something of a government standpoint. Yes, Rebecca.
Just to add on, to like make a quick clarification that might be helpful, pull it from our mission statement that we drafted. The purpose of this board is to streamline process projects. So kind of like making it an easier process instead of having to go through like millions of organizations in order to get something done. We go through us, we try to handle that end of things. And yeah, so that I thought that might be a little more clear.
So this is,
I think, yeah.
we can make the names.
Okay, I don't know, like, I don't have a proposal, but like, I mean,
Yes,
I just think
we can
You
write
are
this.
now Institutional Memory Advocacy Committee, IMAC. I just
Oh!
thought that you were speaking. And I think it's pretty
I
exciting.
motion to
For which one?
I think
For ours,
Yeah, okay, well, I'll submit.
Are you submitting a bylaws amendment again?
Is that really, could we change it?
No, because it has to be an amendment to change anything that's already. I think if you're asking for which one, I think that's like a problem, you know what I mean, like, we should be able to.
I understand.
So, yeah, I do think like it needs to be.
Okay,
And
so
maybe like that happens after we make the teacher.
I agree.
Yeah.
We'll make the T-chart.
Yeah.
We will all brainstorm, we can brainstorm, send me and Alec and Rebecca proposed names for either committee. And then once you have the T-chart, you can do with that information what you will, and I think that that will help clarify. But in essence, the other thing is that this is becoming, we want this to be a board. And so that's what this name amendment is.
Alright, just real quick. The committee that we're on, that's a dedicated fund of $10,000 we use to purchase things, including some like services for immediate use or for long-term use over a period of time. This one is more about creating systemic change within SGA and policies and mechanics. So finding money, talking to people, finding money for mental products year round for all people want, as opposed to fixing pool tables, which it requires just having a little bit of money and some creativity, right? I don't know if that kind of makes, does that maybe clarify a little bit? Might be here.
I will also add this may help, and this is beyond the scope of this SGA, it would be more the purview of next year's SGA. It is entirely possible that because a board is as broad as it is, that the committee could be folded in as part of the board. That's not the design, but it's possible this could be a long-term change that would happen. Again, not the purview of this SGA, that will be next year's, because we have one meeting left.
And again, me and Rebecca are very open to hearing what you have to say and what changes and or how we should progress into the next year, with these student groups. But again, this isn't, you would have to apply to be on this. But you can also.
One more question?
Yeah.
Any more?
Is there like a mechanism to, like, make sure that there's communication between these two organizations besides like somebody being on both?
Yeah, so I think that in general, because we are meeting every Tuesday in an SGA forum, that I think that every time that we go to propose anything, or that we go to motion for anything or use money on anything, of course it has to go through this SGA, but that is another way for us to communicate with each other. I can also create a group chat, if that makes you feel better.
All right, that's it for questions.
Okay, you can also email me, I'll
That's,
make a teacher.
all right, do we want to vote on this tonight? Yeah? Motion to move roll call?
Wait, I have announcements.
No, you guys.
So you said.
What just happened?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Senator Schwartz.
Aye.
Order.
Senator Walsh. Senator Pence. Senator Benner. Senator Nortman. Senator McChesney. Senator Perillo. Senator Lewis. Senator Walker. Senator Malaga. Senator Henry. Senator Bernstein. Senator Ortiga Valencia.
Aye.
President Hernandez. Okay.
Cool, it is the opinion of the chair that the ayes have it, this bylaws amendment passes. Woo! All right, moving on to officer reports. Me. Banquet's gonna be on Sunday, the 28th. 28th, thank you. Sunday, the 28th, at 7 p.m. in the pub. We're gonna do the all-American menu, that kind of crap, that'll be fun. Thursday, the 25th at 4:15, we're doing the State of the Student Body. A lot of staff and faculty are really excited about it. We're going to be putting out a flyer shortly that Cece was so kind to make for me. So if you can all attend, I would appreciate it. If you can't, I understand. Thursday, the 25th at 4:15 p.m. Also, some follow-up stuff. Please apply to Conduct Board if you're interested. We could really use good, dedicated individuals, especially ones who are involved in the SGA. So
I literally just threw a piece into Colette, so I don't know.
you're applying now.
I did. You have me.
It's a great opportunity, and I would really highly recommend it. Something else. Also, tell your constituents to apply for Safe Ride or apply your own self. I do it. I have lots of fun.
You get paid.
You get paid, yeah.
Job. You don't work and listen to music.
Yes, depending on what night you work, you either don't drive at all or you drive all night, but you get to have a lot of fun. Ask Katie and Jake, they were honorary Safe Ride members. Yeah.
I was there for a few hours.
I answered the phone once. It was when no one would come on a Friday that I was working, so I asked Katie to come answer those. So, do that stuff. All right, Davir's not here, Rose isn't here.
Oh wait, really, that's been transferred.
Yes. You announce it yourself. Jake is announcing for Rose.
All right, tomorrow at 8:30 in the pub, the St. Mary's Jazz Band will be performing. So 8:30 to 9:30.
Oh, yeah. What time? Sorry.
8:30 to 9:30.
Are you in that?
No.
Where?
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 All right. Is that it? All right. Director of Publicity, any announcements? Treasurer, any announcements?
All right, I'll give one now. Finance board applications are coming out soon.
So next meeting, so Colin, Roseanne, and Rebecca and I have been working on an agreement for next year, so that's gonna come to a meeting next week, so we'll be ready for that.
Bless you.
Okay.
Club Coordinator Chen.
Guys, our carnival is this weekend, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have been, me and Emma are on the planning committee, so come support your fellow SGA people. So it'll be 4/19. So on the 4/19 day, which is this Friday, it will be in Monty 25 because it's supposed to thunderstorm now. Still gonna be awesome. We have tons of really cool acts. TNA is performing. Hawkettes will be there, they're performing, so please come out. And then Saturday, 4/20, it'll be on Admissions Field. Bring your friends, there'll be lots of free stuff. I know college students love free stuff. But yeah, get excited. Also, if you signed up for Paper Plate Awards, see me after the meeting and I'll give you your person. Cool, I think that's it, yeah.
Shake again.
Another note that I remember right, I'm gonna send out a Google form for SGA awards. We don't know SGA and banquet and give out awards. Some of them are just for SGA people, other than them for like faculty, staff. If you're an executive member, I sent out the nominations list, so please, already fill that out by this Friday, and I'll send out the ballots for us to the drop them. So we'll get that by the SGA banquet.
Parliamentarian Herbert.
Hello, it's me. So since next meeting is our last meeting, any legislation that you can possibly want to happen before the end of this year needs to be to me Friday, 9 p.m. Thanks. Second thing, the election for next year's Senate and class officers is going out tonight. Not getting an exact time, it's taking a little longer than last time. But please tell your constituents to expect that in their email. It's coming directly to them as a Google form because there is more restrictions on both of them.
Student trustee Goodman.
Hi everyone, next board trustees meeting is May 3rd and 4th, and we're all gonna be in campus for that, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's coming up. I mean, you guys are gonna be leaving, right? Most of y'all.
Isn't that still fun?
Yeah, it's still
Still finals, there you go.
I don't graduate till 11.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I know, but you know, we'll be there, but I didn't know.
It's fine.
We'll all be here, pretty cool, pretty great. Aside from our, our changes and, creating some structures that give us better institutional memory and sort of workforce initiatives. If you have together like institutional or like big picture things that you want to talk to me about and say, hey, I think this would be great. I think this is something that's relevant to the student trustees, board of trustees. Whatever, here I am. You can always hit me up too, and whatever social media is your favorite. So yeah, that's about it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Right, Student Rep to Alumni Council.
Hello, everybody. So I've announced this for the past couple weeks, but as Mindy mentioned, Beta Bay is this week, like the main big event on campus. Is this weekend, we have Historic St. Mary's campus cleanup and the Butterfly Garden, which is next to QA, so it's gonna be really fun. You can sign up online, I'll put the link back in the announcement sheet, but there's a bunch of different events all through April, so there's still gonna be some afterwards, but I recommend doing ones on campus. They're in the morning of Beta Bay, or of World Carnival, so that the afternoon is open for fun. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Where do we meet? Like,
So it depends which one you're doing. If you're doing this for St. Mary's, I'm driving the vans for that one, so you meet in DC. For the on-campus cleanup, I don't know the exact location, but once you sign up, you'll probably be contacted with the location, and if you're not, I can direct you. If you just text me or email me. Yeah.
Cool. Soccer is here, Metro is here. Here. Class officer.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
So this weekend is the Natty Bow Hunt, and for those that don't know what this tradition is, this is where seniors spray paint cans, whether they're Natty Bows, typically sometimes they're sodas, sometimes they're beef. So we decorate them throughout the day, and then when the sun goes down, seniors hide them, and juniors, sophomores, and first years are allowed to go hunt for them starting at midnight. So this is happening the night of World Carnival, so just be mindful that this tradition is still going on, even though it falls on the same day as World Carnival. So I just want to say it now so everyone participates. And there is a Facebook event. You have to be invited to it, so if you're not invited already, message me, and I'll invite you soon. You can't. You can't.
Any questions for that?
Oh, and then can you please write a message to your seniors to be mindful when decorating? I sent an email out, but
extra messaging.
Mindful is putting it lightly, just don't be assholes about it. I say that with all full knowledge that I should not be cursing, but it has been a problem in the past, and if it is an issue, God help you all.
Yes, that's the end, I mean.
That's, yeah.
There's no more.
That'll be the end. Senator reports. Anyone, any senators? All right.
I have two Title IX announcements. So tomorrow night, we are doing Sexual Assault Awareness Month bingo, so SAAM is what you can abbreviate it as. 8 o'clock in the library, and we have prizes, $10 prizes. And then I think Don is also doing the campus climate survey report tomorrow, Wednesday, as you mentioned, at 5 and at 12:15 in Colson.
What time is that again?
Which one?
Colson.
12:15 and 5.
I just want to share a real, just real quick, I guess, coming from like my constituents, it's not real yet, but like just the fact that all these events are happening on the same day.
Yeah.
This Saturday, it's World Carnival, Bay Day, it's also Easter weekend.
Yeah.
And other events.
Yeah.
That big students are taking. I just want to express their concerns, and hopefully next year we can space out the schedule.
This is the first time it's ever really like everything's consolidated on one. Well, 90 is always Easter, right?
Yeah.
But this is the first time everything's really consolidated on one weekend, and no one intended for that. Zach, you had your hand up a minute ago.
If someone more organized than myself made a history schedule.
For the day.
Yeah, where it has the list of all the events and the time of the year. And if you can show the overlap, but basically like a schedule where people can go, oh, I can show up to each thing on these for
Can we just make my schedule and screenshot it?
I mean, yeah, can we screenshot my Google Calendar?
All right, Alec, you're up.
Sorry for not having
That's,
You tried
you're
really hard.
fine. That reminded me of Robert's slushies.
Yeah, where's the machine?
Where's the machine? It's been what, 2 years?
It'll come.
Too little, too late, sir. Any other reports or questions or comments for those who have already reported?
Consider the consideration earlier this semester about having ingredients on the burger menu.
Yeah.
How's that? Did we get anywhere with that?
Nope.
On that? Cool. Okay.
I emailed Dave Sensata and I CC'd the appropriate people in it. And despite meeting with him face to face about other things, he has never brought it up to me. And I did not pursue it as diligently as I should have. That is my fault.
One more announcement, I'm so sorry. Can you please remind the seniors to please buy their gala tickets as May 1st is the deadline and it's with May 1st.
I bought mine.
May 1st is the deadline. Cool. Any other announcements? Besides, be sure to apply for Safe Ride and Conduct Board. It's all on Harris. Seconded. Woo!